Now, the attack on Zaporizhzhya has sparked fears that Russia might target Ukraine's many nuclear power plants, leading to a nuclear disaster. There are 4 nuclear power plants in Ukraine. Together, they operate 15 reactors. Almost 52% of Ukraine's electricity comes from these plants. For any invader, these reactors are a target. You capture them, you plunge Ukraine into darkness. But a nuclear power plant is not an ordinary strategic asset. It's not like a port or a highway. You can't just drop bombs on it or march your soldiers in nuclear power plants at a high-risk target. One wrong move, one inaccurate strike, and you could unleash a massive nuclear tragedy. So naturally, Ukraine is worried. Russia has already captured one high-risk target, the Chernobyl exclusion zone. The whole area is now under Russian control. Ukraine says radiation levels are spiking, but experts say a nuclear disaster is highly unlikely. After all, the plant is defunct. But Zaporizhzhya nuclear power plant remains a worry. This war has already exposed Russian hardware problems. Their precision strikes are not always precise. So what's the solution? Ukraine pushed for 2 demands. Number 1, a no-fly zone around the nuclear power plants. And number 2, a 30-kilometer safe zone which Russia cannot breach. In other words, leave the nuclear power plants out of the war. To discuss these demands, the UN atomic watchdog met this week. Its Director General had one message: do not endanger the reactors.
Situation in Ukraine is unprecedented, and I continue to be gravely concerned. It is the first time a military conflict is happening amidst the facilities of a large established nuclear power program, which in this case also include the site of the 1986 accident at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. The safety and security of nuclear facilities and nuclear and other radioactive material in Ukraine must, under no circumstances, be endangered.
Once the statements are done, the next agenda was to pass a resolution. Now, this is a sensitive subject. The International Atomic Energy Agency has a very narrow mandate, only nuclear affairs. Politics and power plays are not their business. But today, their agency made an exception. Their resolution makes 2 political statements. Number 1, a condemnation of Russia's invasion. And number 2, a Russian pullback from all nuclear sites. What does that mean? A, they must vacate Chernobyl. And B, they must not target other nuclear power plants. Now, technically, this resolution is not binding. Russia can still take over Ukrainian nuclear power plants. Having said that, it's another diplomatic blow. Here's how Russia's ambassador to the IAEA responded. The Board of Governors resolution on nuclear security in Ukraine contains intentional, politically motivated lies and mistakes. We asked 3 times to provide concrete facts in this regard. Total silence in their response. End of quote. Of course, Russia is livid. But here's a bigger question. We have seen wars before. We have seen airstrikes on strategic assets before. Why has this one triggered a nuclear concern? For starters, Ukraine's dependence on nuclear energy, 15 reactors, is a lot. No other war in history has been fought in a region so reliant on nuclear energy. Secondly, these are old reactors. Most of them date back to the 1980s. We don't know how secure these facilities are or whether they can withstand attacks. One big worry is the cooling system. To keep it running, you need 24/7 electricity. But what if Russia unplugs the power grid? What if an airstrike cuts off electricity? Worst case scenario. It could be another Fukushima. To talk more about that, earlier we were joined by international affairs expert Kadira Pethiagoda from Melbourne, and this is what he had to say.
The war has gone up recently. I think both sides are trying to strengthen their negotiating position. So I think the overall amount of shelling would definitely have increased, especially in places like Mariupol. I think, though, that we should note that both these countries, both these armed forces, the Ukrainian and the Russian, are very familiar with nuclear power plants and nuclear issues generally. Just obviously Chernobyl was in Ukraine, so I think it's important not to be too alarmist and that the fire is under control. And I think that it's important to obviously to make sure that those areas are secure from some uncontrolled conflict.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.